actually.
How you doing?
Here we are, increasing tax revenue.
All right, it is 1:30. If we can all find a place to sit down, please, we'll get the meeting started.
But it was such a big dramatic change. It was all of a sudden, I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, I try to get as much information. Hey, Karen.
Yeah,
The more I get to know everybody here, I always know what to look for. Bring it to the floor. Good. All right. Thank you. You're welcome to it.
Well, at least you know that.
There was a member that came.
All right, are we all good? We all found a place to sit? We will bring to order the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization meeting for October 12th, 2023, the Center for Collaboration. Please welcome everyone, and would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah!
How are you? I saw you out on the side of the road. There's that guy. I sent you a message about that.
Zoe, would you please do a roll call to confirm the quorum?
Yes. Okay.
Allender. Here. Barton. Here. Cole. Felix. Feltner.
Here.
Forrester.
Here.
Foster. Hanley.
Here.
Goodson. Kennedy. Koss.
Here.
Medina. Minus.
Here.
Pritchett. Robinson.
Here.
Steele. Tobiah. Willis.
Here.
Young.
Here. All right.
Good for your meeting.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Zoe. Public comment. Anyone wishing to make a comment on an item not on the agenda should complete a speaker card. Do we have any comments? Any cards?
No.
All right, thank you. Anyone wishing to make a comment on an item that is on the agenda, you will need to fill out a speaker card, and please give it to Zoe up at this desk. We'll move on to Executive Director reports. Georgiana?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, members. It's good to see everyone. There's a few items that I wanted to update you on. In your agenda package, beginning on page 3, Abby has included the public outreach and engagement report for October and November. There are a lot of Halloween safety outreach events coming up, and quite a few upcoming social media spotlights. Also, FDOT will have their Mobility Week, which is a big event promoting mobility, and the TPO will be participating in a lot of different events along with Space Coast Area Transit. And also, Space Coast Area Transit has several events that we will be participating in, such as ride transit and just opportunities to get people on the bus and experience it. So all of those dates are in the agenda package if you would like to participate and get out and kind of help us with some of those outreach events. You are more than welcome to do so. I do want to update you on the Ellis Road Infra Grant. Now that the grant is officially submitted, that's the TPO's #1 priority, we are really moving into the advocacy stage of the project. And last month, county staff and I traveled to Tallahassee to meet with Secretary Perdue and Secretary Tyler, as well as Senator Mayfield. And, we wanted to just really share with Secretary Perdue all of the progress that we've made on the project, all of the funding that we have been able to put together, the different various funding partners. And we didn't get, the $47 million in single unmarked bills, unfortunately, but we did get a reaffirmed commitment that they are going to continue working at it. And we got the sense that, Secretary Perdue is just very pleased with all of the progress that we've made since he's had visibility on it. So we're going to continue with that effort. We have a 42% match to the federal grant, and that is significant, and that really got his attention. So, the bottom line is they're feeling the squeeze from a funding standpoint, just like we all are. But, we discussed some other options if the infra grant is not successful. And we will just, if anything, we feel like that we just kind of put our marker down as, this is an excellent project and a very good place to invest if there are any more funding initiatives, such as moving Florida forward. So we think it was a very successful meeting, and we look forward to any potential funding opportunities. And then the last item at your place, you have a flyer. It is the 2023 State of Transportation, which is our event on Wednesday, November the 15th, beginning at 8:30, and it's here at the Center for Collaboration. And it's really an opportunity to hear from our local governments, our jurisdiction leaders, our modal agencies, as really they discuss their transportation priorities and their vision for Brevard. And, as we begin our long-range plan development, it's just really critical that we hear from our local governments, because our long-range plan is really the guiding document. It's the cornerstone for our transportation investments. And we want to have a unified vision and one Brevard as we move forward and make sure that we're making the best investments and the right decisions for our community. So we encourage everyone to participate. How many municipalities and agencies do we have, Sarah? Sorry, quite a few. And
almost everybody is what I'll
yes, and each, the county and each city will get roughly 3 minutes, and our modal agencies will have a little longer to talk. So it'll be a very quick presentation from each agency, and we're really looking forward to that. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Georgiana. And now we'll have the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee report. Georgiana.
The TAC-CAC met on Tuesday, and they approved all of the action items that are before you today. There's also a summary of actions at your place. Also in your package, you have the draft TAC-CAC meeting minutes from September the 11th and the 2023 attendance record for the committees, if you would like to take a look at that. So that is the report.
All right, thank you. And next, we will have the Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee. That would be Sarah.
All right. Good afternoon, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. The BPAC met on September 18th to review the recommendations from the BPAC Strategic Assessment. If you recall, around this time last year, we began our BPAC Strategic Assessment, basically due to not only the BPAC members, but staff as well, feeling like They weren't being as effective as they could be. And so we wanted to take a step back and really look at them and examine them. And so, and we brought in an outside party in order to do it. So we did utilize our consulting services in order to get a fresh perspective. So on September 18th, they made a recommendation of where they would like to go as a BPAC based on the assessment, and I will review that now. So just before I dive into the results and what the assessment involved, I wanted to take a second to talk about some BPAC successes. So when the BPAC was first formed, bicycle pedestrian trails planning was not institutionalized. It was kind of a secondary thought. And so since then, since the early 2010 era, we have now institutionalized bicycle pedestrian trail planning into every single project that we do through our various master plans, our LRTP, and also just showing where we're putting our money where our mouth is. Our transportation alternative funding is now prioritized through our project prioritization methodology. And so every single project that is put on the list of project priorities receives additional ranking if they include bicycle, pedestrian, trail, or transit facilities. FDOT considers all streets as complete streets and are considering this through their context classification program, and so looking at the right fit for the right context of street. We've also had some major trail wins. The East Central Florida Regional Rail Trail is completed. Space Coast Trail is funded for construction. The North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail, a mile is completed, and we're awaiting a feasibility study for the rest of it via Sun Trails. I think by the end of the year, I'll be able to make an announcement that we have received that funding unofficially. Brevard Zoo Trail, we have 3 miles complete. Southern Brevard Al Tuttle Trail, a portion is complete, as well as on your agenda today, you'll see that there's a Southern Brevard Trails master plan that is awaiting your approval. So lots of wins and successes. We've come very far. So what the strategic assessment did is it took a step back. It sent out a survey to every single board and committee member. And then we also held a BPAC workshop with them where our consultants reviewed the survey results. There was a lot of discussion around it, as well as also conducted a SWOT analysis. Our consultant then developed recommendations, and we presented those back in June. The BPAC asked for additional time. We were supposed to meet in August. We pushed it back into September due to we were worried about the conflicts with the potential hurricane looming, as well as some quorum issues. So in September, we presented staff recommendations once again, had a really great conversation with our BPAC, and what they made a motion to do is they would like to remain intact in their current makeup, so no changes. They would like an additional workshop to work towards developing a more defined role. And so in response to this, we are going to develop another workshop, as well as also in December hold an orientation with them to help conduct that conversation with the additional workshop in early 2024. And so that kind of concludes our BPAC strategic assessment at this time. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah regarding BPAC? All right, thank you very much, Sarah. All right, next item will be Space Coast Area Transit. Terry.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As I'm reporting on Space Coast Area Transit's, most recently our ridership numbers have shown a steadily increase. Right now, about 16% below pre-pandemic numbers. Ridership in August 23 total 148,968, and that's compared to 177,000 riders in 1 month in 2019. So you can see the variance. We're still not quite back to where we were pre-pandemic, but we're making that steadily increase. Our transportation disadvantaged ridership is about 80% of our pre-pandemic numbers, and this, once again, if you hear me report recently, is the door-to-door sources that we provide to our public. And so that's reflecting a pretty significant rebound as compared to pre-pandemic numbers, and that's about 8,000 trips per month by compared to the 10,000 per month that reservations that we had at that time. Grant allocations, we've recently received a $439,000 grant, which is our annual allocated grant for a corridor grant, which provides the services for routes 4 and Route 9 between Cocoa Beach, and then Cocoa Beach up to Cape Canaveral, and then down to the far end of Cocoa Beach. So we recently received those funds, so of course the service will continue, and the beach trolleys that you've seen out there. We're awaiting our block grant allocation, which is about $1.9 million from FDOT. And this provides pretty much primarily for our fuel allocations for our services that we provide for all over the county. And a couple other things like contracted services like our security and things like the bus stop maintenance, where you see our team is out cleaning the bus stops over the last 2 years. We also awaiting a 5310 FDOT grant, which would allow us for the purchase of 3 additional demand response vehicles. That's in the amount of $667,000. We requested $725,000 for 5 vehicles, but we were awarded $667,000. And with the cost of vehicle increases, we'll probably see it be pushed to about 3 vehicles instead of the 4 we're expecting. This week was the Florida Public Transportation Conference, which was tied into the American Public Transportation Conference in Orlando. Actually concluded yesterday. And once again, Space Coast Area Transit received 3 first-place awards, which is the most, once again, for any system in the state. And we received awards primarily, actually for 2 of the categories were for marketing, and the campaign was to target middle schoolers and high schoolers to utilize our system. It was the Ride On campaign and the Reach Right campaign, which we partner with the local libraries every year. So we're thrilled once again to sweep this category and win several awards as we have done in past. Last item is a continued collaboration with the TPO staff for our 2035 Transit Development Plan, which will coincide with the 2050 Long Range Plan that the TPO is taking place in. And this will commence next week with the passenger surveys, which will go live October 16th and through November 17th online. And then in the 24th of October, we'll have our onboard passenger surveys, which we go out and survey our actual riders to determine how we can better the services that we provide. And this will be included once again in the TDP. Georgiana touched on the Mobility Week events that we're having coming up in November, actually October 27th to November 4th. We have the Tri-Transit Free Ride Day that we've done every year for the last several years, which we encourage individuals that haven't utilized transit to come out and try transit at no expense to themselves. So that concludes my report for this afternoon. Thank you.
Are there any comments? Yes, Mayor Medina.
Sir, thank you for that report. I just had a few questions in regards to the city of Palm Bay.
Sir.
Would you happen to have the increase in numbers of ridership within the city?
I could actually provide the ridership for the routes that serve Palm Bay. It won't be specific to Palm Bay only because the routes that do serve Palm Bay meander through West Melbourne areas, but I can definitely provide the overall ridership increases year to year. Of course, like I mentioned before, if we compare from 2019 up, we're seeing the stellar rebound, but I can definitely get that to you.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in to see not only the frequency of ridership, however, how the city continues to grow, what other areas are being serviced or there's lack of service based on the routes that are available. So I'd be interested to see if there's a report that you could share with those numbers.
I could definitely get the ridership for the services provided in Palm Bay. I can do the year-to-year with no problem, or average monthly by comparison. One of the areas that you mentioned is the lack of areas that have service. We do have, what I just mentioned was the Transit Development Plan, which actually focused primarily on the areas that we have to look at improving services. Of course, that comes at an expense, and that has been the hardest thing to capture now. But we're looking at options with the TDP on how we can provide those services in the future with microtransit or mobility on demand. So that's going to be a big part of this upcoming TDP that hasn't been a major component in past. And what that does is instead of having a 40-foot fixed route bus out there trying to meander through a neighborhood, we have a more smaller vehicle that targets those areas, let's just say like San Filippo that doesn't currently have service, or other areas of Southwest Palm Bay or Bayside Lakes that don't have a whole lot of transit service. Instead of trying to put a bus in that area, we have the microtransit where the individual requests a ride, and then they get brought to a corridor that has the majority of the service, and they transfer from the smaller vehicle onto the vehicle that will take them out to, let's say, West Melbourne or Melbourne Shopping Center, Hammock Landing, things of that nature.
Well, thank you for that, and that's forward thinking, and part of that is our city has exponentially grown, right? Right now, we're at 131,000, and so the northwest section may be also looked at with the southeast corridor of that by the interchange down the Babcock location as well. But thank you for that forward thinking. I really appreciate that.
Most welcome, sir.
Mr. Gogelman, yes.
If I could ask one question, I've noticed that some of the urban areas in Florida now are making a push to convert their bus fleets to electrified systems. Have we looked at that in Brevard at all, and where does that stand, just out of curiosity?
By all means. So if the group here remembers, maybe about early March or so, I did a presentation where we actually submitted an application to FTA to convert some of our, actually to purchase 7 hybrid electric buses. We currently have 2 in our fleet, but we were looking to expand that number. So we are looking at a fleet transition plan that will allow us to convert. And right now we're looking at hybrid electric buses because to purchase fully electric buses, one of the concerns we have is the range of the vehicle. Right now, they're probably roughly about 200 to 300 miles on a bus. You figure that's only half of a day for how we operate. And then secondarily, the infrastructure that's needed to charge these vehicles is pretty significant. And when we approached our power company, we were told it would be somewhat of a challenge for them to provide this infrastructure for us to be able to charge a bus. It's not like charging any of our smaller, typical electric vehicles. I won't call specific names, but there are plenty of them out there now, and I won't disenfranchise anyone. But so that is our concern, is to go fully electric, the needs and the expense that it will cost. Right now, a hybrid electric bus is about $700,000, so you can imagine what a fully electric bus will cost us. But we are going to be submitting additional applications for funding for the hybrid electric, and our next vehicle purchases we will be looking at another hybrid electric vehicle for our next vehicle purchase. We have 2 buses on order right now being built, and the following will be looking at a hybrid. Yes, sir. Thanks. You're welcome.
Ms. Minus.
Hi, Terry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to ask, from the South Brevard corridor from 192, or from Main Street to Mims, Micco, Barefoot Bay, how often does the transit run from that area? Once a week? Once every other hour? Once?
Well, I heard 2 different places. So 192, traveling from, let's just say, through the Melbourne area, from 192 down to the beach side, that service actually runs every 30 minutes. MIMS, we have service that's once an hour. Micco, there is no service currently. Our service, the furthest service that we operate is on US 1, making the right turn back onto Port Malabar. So that's as far south as we operate our service on that corridor right now. And then, like I said, mentioned 192 is between I-95 down to the Melbourne Square Mall, and then back from Martin Luther King Boulevard down to the beach side, or through, of course, downtown Melbourne first.
Okay.
And all of those are operating either on a 30-minute or 60-minute headway currently.
Okay, so you don't have anything that's pretty much going South County?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there anything in the future for Barefoot Bay? If I want to move to Mims or Barefoot Bay, I'm a senior citizen, so I may be moving to Barefoot Bay. I may need a bus to get to the mall.
So once again, I'll go back to the transit development plan. There have been plans, there have been identified plans for service. However, the need has not shown the requests have not shown that there has been a very strong need. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier for the microtransit type services. So areas where we have lower ridership or lower density, we're looking at opportunities that we can have a smaller vehicle provide that service. So like yourself, if you were to move into an area that has no fixed route service, we will have currently we have demand response, so I'll clarify there, where you can request a bus if you are transportation disadvantaged, which means you're a senior or disabled, or there's actually two other qualifications, but where you can actually get that service and the vehicle comes to your home, takes you to your destination. But what we're looking to do is implement something that is a little bit less of a taxi ride type service, where it can actually commingle our TD population and our regular population for utilizing the service.
One last question.
Yes, Ms. Minus.
If there is anyone, piggybacking off of the mayor from Palm Bay, if anyone needs a ride from those areas from South County, if they call the SCAT line, would they be able to get service, or instead of an Uber?
Let me make sure I'm clear on your question. So the answer is, if a person is considered transportation disadvantaged, like I said, those qualifying factors, yes. However, if a person is not transportation disadvantaged, no, there will be not a service that's provided to them, unfortunately, because we don't provide fixed route service in the area.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions for Terry? Thank you, Terry. And I just want to say congratulations on the awards and congratulations on the grants.
Thank you again,
Certainly
everyone.
worked very hard for them.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is Florida Department of Transportation. Chuck? There you are.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. I'd like to start off with lane closures for this month. On NASA Boulevard from Wickham Road to State Road 5, we have lane closures from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they will be single lane closures east and westbound. On State Road 520, West King Street from Aurora Road to Hubert Humphrey Causeway, we have single lane east and westbound closures from Aurora Street to Var Avenue for construction activities, and those lanes will be closed from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Fifth Avenue from Riverside Place to Miramar Avenue, that has been closed for a couple months, having lane closures, but this month they have changed their schedule from a 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it is now 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. As of now, there are no FDOT events planned in Brevard County for this month, and nor is there any new projects about to start. On the subject of new projects, I would like to point out a fact that in the agenda packet, you are actually being shown the August report for construction. Unfortunately, we weren't able to obtain the September report until the agenda had already been let out. So I'd just like to go over a couple of upcoming projects to make sure that you still have the most current information. The State Road 500 at Hollywood Boulevard, originally estimated to start September 2023, is now estimated to start December 2023. And State Road A1A Safety Project, along with the State Road A1A from Crescent Beach Drive to south of Minuteman Causeway. Originally set to start this month, October 2023, will now start December 2023. So ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate this time to be up here to speak to you for the first time face-to-face. I just want to let you know that as we go through the process of me growing within the process, all these systems that we want to put in place so that we get you the right information as soon as possible is our number one goal. So by all means, any suggestions that you have, feel free to talk to me. Every time you folks have an issue or a question, I view it as an education opportunity so I can learn this very complex system. I mean, I don't know how many times I've driven by a road and said, why does it take so long to fix that? Now I know. But I also want to mention that last meeting, I did take some notes down on some issues. Mayor Medina, there was the I-95 Malamar intersection, obviously. Email was sent to you by Stephen Buck explaining the plan to address this issue. And I hope that was helpful to you. And Councilwoman Minus, you mentioned some about the lines were almost impossible to see on US 1. I did reach out to Ops, and it is on the schedule to be repainted February. So I looked into that for you as well. So basically, that's all I have for today. I'd like to open the floor to any questions.
Any questions for Chuck? Yes, Mayor Medina.
So, sir, yes, sir, I did receive the email and had a lengthy conversation with Mr. Buck, and I truly appreciate the plans and such. In the meantime, some of the discussion that was made is the west side of that corridor, and staff is digesting those plans, by the way. The west side of that corridor is it's county, and I know that I've also received a letter from Commissioner Feltner, and we're in the process of getting support from the Board of County Commissioners as well on how we can expedite this request. As I shared with Mr. Buck, we've lost a life out there, and I just wanted to raise the awareness of that, and anything that can be done to expedite this process, whether it's adding an exit lane, because as your cameras will show you, 95, the right lane on 95, as it approaches the Malabar Road interchange, comes to a complete stop. And that is dangerous on several levels. The middle lane slows down as well, and so that can create a whole nother slew of safety concerns. So I just wanted to bring that up, but I certainly appreciate Mr. Buck's conversation and his detailed plan that he afforded us, and we are digesting it. My concern is whatever we can do to expedite that, move that forward, that project moving forward, I believe it could save a life. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for, yes, Ms. Minus?
Okay, I'd just like to follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chuck, for this update. You said February 2024, right?
Yes.
Okay, you know, we're in the process now of discussions and talks and all about the US 1 corridor that is, for safety reasons, is going to include a median. So that is a major conversation. So if we're going to redo this restriping, which I'm totally in favor of because I've almost been blindsided several times, if you're going to do that now, then whatever's going to happen with that corridor, will that hamper or slow this process up, or are you still going to go ahead with the restriping? Because they're talking about putting this median in the middle of US 1, which is totally absurd.
So from what I understand, ma'am, you're wondering if this project will hinder that project?
Yes.
Okay.
Or that project will hinder this, I don't know, whatever the discussion is.
Okay. Thank you for that, ma'am. I appreciate that, that concern. Members of the board, I hope you'll appreciate that as I learn and as I go. My general response is I'm going to find that out for you. As I grow and develop and I'm more confident in any answer I can give, I will give it then. I just don't ever want to give anybody the wrong answer and give you hope and then it all comes crashing down. So I will look into this for you because, like I said, another education experience, and I appreciate that.
Chuck, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
I do not believe it will hamper the restriping because the US 1 resurfacing and the median project is still in the design phase. And so I think Brevard Operations will just go out and do a simple, get it on the schedule to go out and do a simple maintenance project to do that restriping. So I do not believe that it would get in the way of the larger resurfacing project because the construction phase is a couple of years out. So I think we'll be fine. And I will also tell you that we do have a meeting set up with Tammy Gillen, as well as Cindy Dittmer, to talk about that project, because I know you are very concerned about it. So that is next week, I believe.
Okay.
So-
So a lot of residents also.
Yes.
So definitely want to get a better understanding. I thank you, Chuck, for this. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Suzanne Phillips, and I'm the Brevard Operations Engineer, and the striping is going to be done out of my office, so I can assure you it is not going to it's not going to conflict. Striping is really important, so even if we had something going on simultaneously, we would still make sure that the striping becomes, it's just very important. So, and we can even try and expedite it if we can. We've got a lot of striping we're doing on 95 right now, so we will get to it as soon as we can.
Great. Be a great Christmas present.
Okay, let me see what I can do. Thank you.
So Chuck, I just have a comment here. So I have been promising to my residents that live right at State Road 500 in Hollywood, promising them for years now that this intersection improvement is coming, it is coming, and they're so excited and they're waiting for that first sign of activity. And I did tell them September, and I'm getting all the where is it, where is it, where is
Right.
it? So can I tell them, can I give them an idea? I know it's up to December now, but what's the holdup?
Oh, I'm sorry, and I forgot to mention that. Thank you for reminding me, Councilwoman. They are waiting for the trafficking signal equipment. It's been a delay in the shipment of that, so that's been.
Read the consent agenda out loud for the record.
Yes, on your consent agenda, 4A is the TPO Governing Board and Executive Committee meeting minutes of September 14th. You also have some committee appointments with an add-on at your place. We also have a Resolution 24-06, the UPWP fiscal year 23 through 24 amendment. This is a housekeeping item where we are moving some unspent task balances to our fiscal year 24. And you also have our 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan and Transit Development Plan Public Engagement Plan, which lays out how we're going to engage the public in both of these major plans. You also have Work Order 24-08K, which is the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan Scope of Services, and then Resolution 24-07, which is our 2023 Mobility Week proclamation. So that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion Medina, second Minus. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the action agenda items. 5A, approval for the 2024 legislative priorities and policy positions.
All right, so that is mine as well. Similar to our member governments, the TPO adopts a set of policy positions every year. And in your agenda package, and also you should have at your place a fold-out, 4 pages here that is labeled 2024 Legislative Priorities and Positions. And, you know, when we put together our policy positions, they're really developed with consideration of priorities from various organizations, such as the League of Cities, Florida's Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Coalition, and the Florida Bicycle Association. And we also have really started working very closely with our chambers, especially the Melbourne Regional Chamber, and they have picked up some of our priorities related to funding, or lack thereof, which is a problem for Florida. And so we definitely, we look at priorities from various different organizations, including the statewide MPO organization, which is the 27 MPOs. So we will be having the Brevard Legislative Delegation on October the 25th at 4 p.m. at the Port. The Port will be hosting that. And there are very minor updates to our priorities, but I do want to review them briefly. On the front cover, of course, we have our top 3 priorities. If you open up to page 2, at the very top of that page is really focused on funding, and there have been no changes on that section. You know, one of the things that continues to come up is that we really would like someone we would love for the DOT to have the permission to study a potential revenue replacement for the current motor fuel tax, which is no longer able to fully support the current or the future needs of our transportation system. And I do want to mention that apparently a senator from Palm Harbor has filed a bill, Senate Bill 28, which imposes an additional registration fee on electric vehicles to make up for the lost fuel tax revenue. He also filed a similar bill last year, but it did not advance. And in this particular bill, 64% of the proceeds will be deposited into the State Transportation Trust Fund, and the remaining 36% will be allocated to the county which the vehicle is registered. And it must be used for transportation purposes. So we find that very interesting. So we will see how that bill progresses through the legislature. So it continually comes up every year, and at least, it's being discussed. Not sure what the chances of that actually passing or not. At the bottom of that page is really advocating for safety and innovation. We're supporting safe driving by prohibiting the handheld use of electric wireless communication devices. Hands-free Florida. Actually, almost 1/2 of all states already have enacted this particular legislation. That remains the same as well. If you turn to the next page, which is page 3, this is really our only change that we have on our priorities, and that is move over for people. We have added this one, and it expands the current move over law to include people or vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians, bicyclists, and disabled individuals using mobility devices. You have the 3-foot rule, but this particular legislation would require you to vacate the lane to move over for the vulnerable road users. And then at the bottom, these are our priority transportation projects. Of course, we discuss Ellis, and we listed a few of our high priority projects throughout Brevard County. And for a complete list of all of our priorities, there is a link just to the left of that page. And then on the very last page, the back cover, we listed all of our 19 board members because we felt it was important that our legislators understand who the TPO board is. And so that is our proposed 2024 policy positions, and we would ask for approval or your thoughts. Did we leave anything out? Do you want to have any adjustments?
Yes, Ms. Goss.
Yeah, I was going to start. First, a question, because we support state legislation that the safety and innovation. So under the innovation, we list electric. What are we referring to there?
So this item, so when I'm talking about innovation here, we're talking about improving the efficiency of the system. So, including autonomous, connected, electric, advanced traffic signals, as well as technologies not yet developed. So that could also include intelligent transportation systems, which, as you know, we've made huge investments in connecting our signals. And so as we continue to have autonomous vehicles, when they become, more commonplace at one day, that technology, once that technology gets into all of our vehicles, and then the traffic signals can talk to those vehicles, that is where the technology will come in, and that's where the safety is really going to be a game changer for everyone. So that is really the purpose of that particular item.
And the autonomous vehicles are electric, right? They're EVs.
Yes, but autonomous meaning self-driving,
Right.
Which.
Right. But do you not see any contradiction between that and the 5th bullet point, on the top of the page, the state legislation that allocates and advocates for transportation funding.
Charging alternative.
The fuel, yes, a disincentive for electric vehicles because they would be penalized beyond gas vehicles. Gas vehicles pay a gas tax, which is based on the number of miles that they drive. This tax proposes whether you drive 20 miles a week or 200, you would be paying the same amount. I know in other states they have chosen to go with a tax based on the number of miles that EVs do so that it doesn't become a disincentive from purchasing EVs, which we know provide other benefits, whether it be cleaner air, less oils and gas on the road, which end up in stormwater, which we know is much easier cleaned up by preventing that pollution than doing it after. So I would really like to voice my opposition to that particular approach. I understand that electric vehicles should pay their share. I've looked into a comment that was made at a previous meeting as the weight. When I went to all of the industry literature and a couple of associations that deal with that, of course, an electric vehicle weighs about twice as much, I guess, because of the battery. But that was still so insignificant compared to trucks, the trucks that we have on the road. Compared to the benefits that it provides in cleaner air, less stormwater pollution, et cetera. So we'll just put that out there, and it looks like, have we voted? I know we've discussed this before.
This particular, under the funding section, these were verbatim, actually, from the statewide MPOAC, with the 27 MPOs. What the answer is for the EV situation, I don't think anyone really knows what would be the best solution. You're right. The last thing we would want to do is to discourage anyone from purchasing an electric or plug-in electric vehicle. However, at some point in the future, 2030, 2035, if we have the grid system to be able to support all these EVs, we are going to come up on a financial cliff regarding our transportation system because, the business model just isn't working.
That's it.
And if this was a business, you're going to go broke.
Yes.
So I don't know the answer.
Okay. And I fully appreciate that.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that electric vehicles should not pay their share. There's a contradiction here, though, when we're spending taxpayer dollars to incentivize EVs, and then we're actually penalizing them. Well, it's only in certain states where it's being proposed this way. And I think that was part of the problem getting it passed last year. It's just that it's relatively easy with electric vehicles to even have that information reported so that, it's not even an issue of collecting it. And it just seems to me it would be a better approach.
Are there any other comments? Yes, Mr. Medina, or Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. I just had some questions regarding that bill and the registration aspect to that. As you know, local municipalities and the county get the local option gas tax, right? And so that helps with our infrastructure. And I think that's the whole purpose of this bill, the registration and so on, because we're still going to have the roads regardless. And so my question is more directed towards, in that bill, would you happen to know if it deciphers what goes to the county, and are the municipalities going to be sideswiped with that or sidestep with it? Or is the county at that point going to share in that type of funding? And is it based on the registration of the municipality?
You are reading my mind. Mark Reichert, the MPOAC Executive Director, actually sent this to all the MPOs just a few days ago, and we will get him to dig into this and find out what the intent is. So that is a very, very good point. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I appreciate that, ma'am, as long as we kind of pay attention to that, because it's the municipalities that will be affected. And if it's by registration, population, and so on, that is my concern, as I'm sure the counties as well. Thank you.
Mr. Forrester.
And I just want to make sure I've got this clear in my head that what we're looking at here is ideas that we would support. There's not been has there been any actual bill filed on that particular issue, for example?
The one that the mayor and I were just discussing is Senate Bill 28, Senator Huber. Yes, thank you, sir. I called his name wrong. So we will definitely dig up more information regarding this bill. But as far as the rest, not that I'm aware of, no.
I was just going to say, it seems to me that most of this is long-range aspiration.
Yes, yes.
And I think it might be too early in the game to get terribly bogged down in detail of how we're going to divide it, exactly where it's going to come from, because I think none of that has been determined. And by the time it is determined, the number of electric vehicles is going to increase. But you're right, we do have to, the electric vehicles, we have to figure out a way to make them pay their own way. But I kind of, on a personal level, just have a little problem with having to report how many miles I've driven. That doesn't sound right to me. You know, and it's not, your gas tax is not based on how many miles you drive, it's based on how much gas you buy.
Which is
So, I
basically.
mean, you can fill your tank up and go park out in the driveway and sit in the air conditioning for 12 hours, not go anywhere, but you're still paying the gas tax. So.
It's a user fee, really.
Yeah.
You know, I think ultimately, we need Washington to really dig into the issue as to, you know, a revenue replacement source. I mean, that's what really needs to happen, a plan for the country. Because you know, the federal gas tax has not been raised since 1993, I believe.
And the gas mileage of vehicles has increased, the averages have increased tremendously since then.
Yeah.
So we're driving more and paying less per mile in gas tax to do it, even now. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just pointing out, right now, we're looking at long-range aspirational items, and I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Forrester. On Senate Bill 20, did anyone else want to make a comment on that before I go off? Okay. I believe in that bill it says 60% of that fee that is paid goes to the county where the vehicle is registered. So I would think 100% should go where it is registered, since that's where the majority of the driving is done. And obviously, some people do go out of the county, but I would think there should be some kind of restriction that remaining 40% be used for roads only, and that it doesn't go into the general coffers and get eaten up and does everything else but maintain the roads.
I think that's a great idea, but it'll never happen because the state's going to get theirs.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to, we need to do a vote on this.
Yes, please.
Madam
Yes, it's
Chair.
an action item. Yes, Ms. Minus.
I move for approval of 2024 legislative priorities and policy positions.
Second.
All right, motion minus second. Forrester, all
Question.
those in, yes, Ms. Cos?
Yeah, can my opposition be noted? Can I
Yes, when we
support
get to
the overall?
those opposed, I was expecting to hear a nay.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Motion carries, opposed by Lorraine Koss. Okay, next item is approval, Resolution 24-08, Space Coast Membership Apportionment Plan.
All right, last item for me. This is another action item. Every 10 years after the U.S. Census, and that was in 2020, we are required to review the composition of our membership here at the TPO board. And we also have to look at our metropolitan area boundaries, and then we submit an apportionment plan to the Florida Department of Transportation, which has taken the lead, and then that ultimately is approved by the governor. And this all needs to be done, or we need to submit that to DOT by November the 14th. And you can refer to page 109 in your agenda package. We did have a discussion with our executive committee concerning the apportionment plan, and their recommendation was that the membership apportionment remain unchanged with the 19 members. And if you see on page 109, you will see our 2020 population for the cities and the county here in Brevard County, and then the percent of the county total. So in 2020, we were at 606,612 population. That number is much higher now. And you see that each one of the cities has, their TPO members. Of course, Melbourne and Palm Bay, being our two largest cities, get 3 members each. And Titusville receives 2 members due to their population and the percentage of the population. And if you go down to the next section, Grant, Valcaria, Malabar, Melbourne Village, Palm Shores, those 4 towns are under 1%, so they do not get a seat on the TPO board. And then you go down to the county commission districts, and each one of the county commissioners receives a seat. So all 5 members of the county commissioners are on TPO board members. And then, of course, the Canaveral Port Authority receives a seat. So we have a total of 19 members, and we have not seen any significant changes that would change the composition of our TPO board membership. So we are requesting approval, maintaining our current apportionment plan, and we will, with your blessing, send that off to the Florida Department of Transportation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Minus, second by Medina. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Thank you, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that does it for our action items. Next, we'll move on to presentations. 2022 State of the System.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Garrison, and I'll be presenting the results of the 2022 State of the System report.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, so today I'll give a quick overview of what the SOS is, and then we'll get into some of the results, including the countywide trends, safety, congestion, and reliability. So the SOS is an annual performance evaluation of Brevard County's transportation network. We look at the roadways, but also transit and the performance of the various ports. We also consider a lot of different transportation factors like demographic, tourism, safety, congestion, and so on. So why do we conduct the SOS? Well, it provides technical guidance to the TPO. There's a lot of data that comes out of this analysis that's useful in other ways as well. It's a key component of the required congestion management system, and it helps identify where federal and state dollars should be spent to improve the transportation network. Moving on to countywide trends. And the trends in 2022 were very good. So we saw an increase in hotel occupancy as tourism continued to recover in 2022. Transit ridership also went up, as Terry mentioned. At the airport, we saw a really large increase in the number of passengers. I know we've got international flights out of Melbourne, Orlando now, which is really exciting. And then space launches went up as well by a significant amount. Over at, whoops, too fast. Over at Port Canaveral, we saw a major increase in the number of cruise passengers as that industry really recovered, and then port cargo went up as well. Okay, so moving on to safety. So this year we added the Vision Zero high injury network into our safety analysis. So we updated the high injury network that has been developed in years past to include 2018 to 2022 data. So that's looking just at serious and fatal injury crashes. And the goal of the HIN really is to target safety improvements where we see the largest crash severity concerns. So moving on to our results. This first chart on the left here, we've got fatal and serious injury crashes for all of Brevard County, all the modes. So the big thing you see here is that crashes are going down, which is great to see. So about 11% decrease from the previous year in 2021. What we also have on the right is a map showing first the whole HIN network. So that's the thin lines and the white intersections. So that's the entire HIN network for all 4 modes. So that's the vehicles, the peds, or pedestrians, the bicycles, and the motorcycles. And then what you also see in that kind of darkish green color is the top 10 segments for the vehicle HIN. So not surprisingly, you have a lot of segments on I-95 that have a lot of vehicle crashes. So then we have our vulnerable road users. So again, that's the pedestrians, bikes, and motorcycles. So the thing we see here is a slight increase in the number of crashes from 21 to 22. And then, however, there was a decrease over the 5-year trend. So we'll keep monitoring that and see where those crashes go. And then over on the right, you can see again that whole HIN network, but you can also see the top 5 segments and intersections for each mode. There's a couple things that stand out to me. You can see down in the Palm Bay Road and Minton area that there's a couple of bike intersections that are all clustered together. And then kind of up into the Cocoa and Merritt Island, there's a cluster of segments as well. But these are kind of all spread out throughout the county, generally speaking. So in addition to crash severity, we also looked at crash frequency. So similar to that first chart, this is all crashes in Brevard County in that chart, and you got about an 8% decrease from the year before. This has kind of fluctuated on and off over that 5-year span, so we'll just continue to see where those crashes go, but it's good to see it go down in 22. And then on the right, you've got a map showing the top 10 segments and intersections for crash severity for those vehicles. Again, not surprising to see I-95 kind of lit up throughout there. And then we also have, again, crash frequency for the vulnerable road users. Similar to the crash severity, we did see that trend go up, so this will definitely be something to monitor. And then you can see the top 5 segments and intersections for each of those road users. The thing that stands out to me the most is that Malabar and San Filippo is lit up for each of those modes in the top 5, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on in terms of crash frequency. Okay, moving on to congestion. So we look at all of the crash, or sorry, not all of the crash, moving on to congestion. We look at all of the roadway volumes throughout the county. This slide is pretty straightforward. It's just the highest roadway and intersection volumes in the county. Nothing too surprising here, I would say. You see a lot of Malabar, a lot of Palm Bay Road, a lot of Wickham, and US 1 as well. So we'll continue to monitor this, but this is pretty similar to what we've seen in previous years. And then we also look at congested corridors as well. So the way we do this is by using something called a volume to capacity ratio. So we look at the daily volume on a roadway and compare that to the daily capacity of the roadway. That ratio tells us how congested a roadway is. If the ratio is over 0.85, we would consider that to be congested. And then it's especially troubling if that's over 1. And as you can see, we talked about Ellis right at the beginning, but Ellis is at the top of the list, so that just emphasizes how significant that roadway project is and how needed it is. But you also see some other corridors around the county that are congested too. And then our final topic is reliability. So this is something new that we added to the analysis this year. So obviously congestion tells you a lot. If a roadway is just chock full of cars, you're going to have trouble driving that roadway. But the other thing that you might have frustrations about on your daily commute is if a roadway isn't reliable. So if you're driving one day and it takes 15 minutes, and then the next day it takes a half hour, and then it takes 45 minutes the day after that, you can't plan your route around that. You can't plan when to leave and when to go. So the goal of reliability in this analysis is really to see which roadways are inconsistent throughout the year. And so we do this by taking a sample of the whole year, and then we'll compare the travel times across the year. So we'll divide the 80th percentile travel time by the 50th percentile travel time. This example at the bottom is a lot more helpful than just that equation. So if 50% of the time it takes 30 minutes to travel to your destination, and 20% of the time it takes 50 minutes, if you divide 50 by 30, you're going to get a 1.6 for your factor, and that would be into the unreliable range. So that's a quick example. Moving on to our data, we looked at 5 different time periods. So we looked at the weekday daily, we looked at the weekday AM and PM peaks, and then we also looked at the weekend and the peak season, which we considered to be March or right around spring break. So you can see the green, that would be considered reliable. The yellow is getting pretty close to being unreliable, and then red is unreliable. And really what we're trying to do here is not necessarily identify every single place where you see yellow and red, but see what are the areas that are consistently lighting up over different time periods. So we've highlighted those in those blue circles, but you see a few in Titusville, one in Cocoa, and then a few in the Palm Bay and Melbourne areas. And then I'll go ahead and flip through this. So again, that's the AM and the PM. And then that is the weekend and the peak season. So we're just getting into this, really starting to see what the results are and think about how to use this data. A couple things that come to mind as you think about reliability, it's what causes unreliability. Well, one thing could be a consistent crash trend. So if a roadway keeps having crashes, that would cause paramedics might have to come, and that causes all sorts of delays. So this could be pointing to there being crash issues in those areas, but maybe it's a signal retiming issue. So we haven't gotten that far into thinking about what to do with this data, but it gives us another tool in our toolbox to think about what sorts of things you can be doing out here to improve the experience for people on the roadways. Okay, so that's the 2022 State of the System. So any questions?
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew?
I have,
Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead.
Forrester.
I spoke to Georgiana about this a minute ago. My question is, when we do...
Can you get on the mic, sir? Thank you.
Yes, I can. When we work on a section of road, or we recommend that a section of road or an intersection, whatever it is, be worked on for safety reasons primarily. Maybe it's adding a turn lane on an intersection, a divider, whatever. Do we track how much impact that actually has on accident statistics and injuries, be it to pedestrians or vehicles?
Do you want to speak to that, Georgiana?
I do not, well, I will say one way we can track it is to see what the crash history is the next year, and then the next year, and the
Right.
next year. But as far as going any deeper than that,
Sometimes we'll do before and after studies, but that's like a specific thing you might look at because it's something you really are interested in. Not necessarily as a general rule do you look at every improvement and decide we are going to study this or not.
I think that would give us a better idea of how to spend our money. If we know that, we spend $500,000 on a project and it doesn't result in any reduction of accidents or injuries, then do we want to do that again? Maybe we need to spend that $500,000 somewhere else.
Sure.
Or $5 million or $10 million.
Cautious of that. Laura Carter, Assistant Director. We've thought about that a lot, but one of the things when you go in and you make improvements, say you go in and you add a sidewalk or a bike lane, you'll actually have more users. And so you may see crashes go up. That doesn't mean that it's more dangerous. There's just more people using it. So you have to be cautious when you're looking at the data and you're making these improvements. Volumes go up, more people are moving here, we're having a higher population. So looking at before and after studies, you have to take into context the number of users and what improvements you have made. It may actually be safer, but you have a much higher usage. And I believe some of your studies that Kittleson's done on some, I think Orlando, it's got a couple of corridors that they've added complete streets improvements that directly reflects that kind of change. So just be cautious when we're looking at data. This is just the state of the system and how it's performing at a snapshot in time. So it's just another tool.
I'm well aware that the number of variables in a given situation are almost infinite. I mean, it's an incredible thing to try to figure out, but I think it behooves us to at least make an attempt to figure it out, and so to recommend the best uses of our funds for safety purposes specifically. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you, Mr. Forrester. Any other questions for Andrew? Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor Medina.
So I just wanted to thank you for your presentation and highlight, you mentioned San Filippo and Malabar quite often, and just to let you know, part of the scope of services and the plan that was submitted by FDOT, Mr. Buck in particular, really affects that same corridor, San Filippo and Malabar Road. So I just wanted to put that on the record as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Thank you. And Mayor Medina, I did want to comment that after our last meeting, when I believe it was you that said when you get down to exit, 192 is exit 180, when you get to 179, and then I think the next one south, what a madhouse that is, how crazy it is. You really need to experience it to appreciate it. Well, I went there. I don't appreciate it. It was not fun at all. It is everything that you said it was, and probably more, depending on the day and the weather. If it's pouring rain, how far more dangerous that is.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Thank you.
You certainly have my support on your concern for that.
Thank you, ma'am.
No other questions? All right, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next item is going to be on Vision Zero, and we have a card on that item. Sandra Sullivan, do you want to come up and speak on Vision Zero?
Good afternoon, Sandra Sullivan from South Patrick Shores. We have a huge number of golf carts that have gotten very popular and improving all the time. So as it pertains to Vision Zero, my formal request is education. I've talked to and met with FDOT about the issue. In my area, they are not allowed because there's no ordinance. A lot of confusion. People think that an LSV is a golf cart. We have municipalities and we have even Brevard County treating golf carts and LSVs the same, and they are governed by different state statutes. And I think this is a Vision Zero issue because of the potential loss of life. One of the differences between a golf cart and an LSV is a golf cart does not need a seatbelt. So we see in my community vehicles crossing A1A, which they're not allowed to do, with 2- and 3-year-olds not buckled in. It's a matter of time until there's loss of life. And so this is I'm very passionate about this issue. I would actually request consideration of legislatively working with our state representatives. And the suggestion I would give is to have any vehicle, golf cart that is driving on the road be updated to the safety requirements of an LSV and be licensed and DMV registered with a plate. And the reason is I'm talking to some of the owners, and they're telling me the reason that they can update their vehicles to LSV, the reason that they keep them as golf carts is because they don't want to pay for insurance. And this costs lives, and this costs children's lives, we're going to feel pretty bad. And also working with our local municipalities and district to follow the law, which we're not right now. We're allowing LSVs to drive around Vieira, for example, that are LSVs and are required by the state to be licensed with a plate and then follow different rules than a golf cart. Same for Satellite Beach. They don't have a golf cart ordinance. They're not allowed, but they're crossing A1A and not following the rules either. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Great. And we wanted to, Shelby? Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. In the interest of safety, I'm so glad you're all in here with me and not driving out on those roads, so glad no one left. Really excited to meet with you all today. This is the first annual update I've gotten to give you all regarding Vision Zero, so excited to give it today. Really just gonna go over a little bit about what we've been doing and then some of the stats regarding 2023 data. I know Andrew just went over a lot of 2022 data, but I'll try to be distinctive of the differences there. And then some of the things that we've got coming up. So for those of you who might need a little refresher, I just want to go over what Vision Zero is. And so essentially it's the strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. And I like to point that out because almost to Laura's point there, it's not this idea of just reducing these fatal and serious injuries, but it's also getting more people out and using different modes, right? So we're gonna be actually getting more people out on the roads and saving lives. One thing Vision Zero isn't is it is not ending crashes altogether as well. So that's another misconception. A lot of people think that Vision Zero means zero crashes. It's essentially just focused on zero fatalities and serious injuries. We understand crashes happen, but what we hope is that people are gonna walk away from those crashes, right? We wanna reduce the number of crashes that result in end of life and those serious injuries that send people to the hospital. So, reducing speed limits, reducing conflict points, changing something from being a big T-bone crash, right, to maybe a little bit of a fender bender. So those types of things. For those of you who may not have been around, if we've got some new faces here. So we adopted our resolution at the TPO back in July 2019, and then our action plan was published a year later. And so that action plan is what we've been using to kind of drive forward our strategies and objectives with Vision Zero. And so we'll talk more about that, but we've actually, we're making some changes to that, and I'll be excited to kind of share those. But it's kind of where we're at, a little snapshot of those pieces there. So again, I know Andrew gave you all a lot of numbers, but I'm gonna put a little asterisk on these. So with our crash reporting, we have these on a bit of a delay. About 60 days is how long it takes for us to get access to this data. And so I wanted to pull these numbers to kind of give you a better glimpse of what we're seeing for 2023. So all of the data that I'm going to show you today, one is going to focus more on the vulnerable road user. Those are your pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists. And also it's going to be comparing crash data from January through July. And so even when we're looking at last year's data, we're just looking at January through July. And so when we're looking at just fatal and serious injury crashes from January through July, because that's the data I have available for this year thus far, we've had a total of 254 fatal and serious injury crashes this year. Comparing that over 2022 and 2021, we're seeing fewer fatals, which is always a good thing, but more serious injuries, and so slightly more overall when we total those together. And I apologize because I wanted to try to squeeze July in there. I don't have this in your packet, but we will make sure it gets up on the website so that you'll have access to the reports. And so when I break that down, that's showing us that 40% of those fatal and serious injury crashes are involving vulnerable road users. And so like I said, those are your bicyclists, your pedestrians, and your motorcyclists. But on the flip side of that, 60%, which is a larger share, right? Those are going to be your motorists, your drivers. Those could be mopeds, and anything else that's going to get classified in your crash report. I wanted to do a year-over-year comparison of that from last year. Again, this is January through July, not the full year. In case you saw Andrew's numbers, I don't want you to get confused. I wanted to call it out because if you notice here, bicyclists and pedestrians are taking up a smaller piece of that pie this year than they were last year at the same time. I don't want to make assumptions, but if I wanted to take a guess, I have a couple reasons maybe why, and one of them could be the weather, right? I don't know about you guys, it's been very hot this year. I haven't taken nearly as many walks or bike rides as I did maybe last year, so could have just been fewer people out enjoying the summer weather. So there could have just been fewer people out on the road. The other thing could be is that at a state level from our coalition meetings, I know that there's been a lot of issues with crash reporting, specifically with a lot of the micromobility devices. It's harder to put some of those in categories like with the one wheels and things like that. So some of those could be falling into the other instead of going into different categories. So can't say for sure, but it is interesting to see those taking a smaller piece, and we are definitely seeing a larger piece of motorcyclists. Further breaking those down, pedestrians, we are seeing fewer pedestrian fatalities, which is great, and then a similar number of serious injuries. For bicyclists, a similar number of fatalities over last year, but fewer serious injuries. And then again with motorcyclists, as I said, we are seeing more serious injuries, but about the same number of fatalities. And so again, these are just further breakdowns of those larger pieces of data that I showed you on those. And so again, I just wanted to break them down to kind of put those into perspective for you all to see that the biggest takeaway I want you to get from these numbers and even the numbers from the safety perspective that Andrew shared were that these data points are people, right? These aren't just numbers on a graph, these are lives. They're people that are impacted, they're families that are impacted. And so that's the big message I want you to take from all these numbers and that's why it's so important to work together and really be here today. And that's why, I'm so appreciative of the work that, we do at the TPO and that our board does and our committees do to help us kind of achieve this. So to dive into that, I do want to do a quick overview of kind of what we've been working on this year. So right after our last annual update in December, we did achieve 100% adoption of our resolutions. So all of the municipalities in Brevard County, as well as the county and the school board, have adopted a Vision Zero resolution saying that they are in support of achieving that goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries. We collaborate frequently. We have a Vision Zero leadership team that meets quarterly to advance the objectives of the action plan and work strategically at a regional level to talk about different things that we have going on and, like I said, advance forward that action plan. We also hosted a workshop this year, our Vision Zero Taking Actions Together workshop, where we were able to share some resources and really try to, again, advance forward our action plan. The big challenge here is that the TPO is not an implementing agency. We're not able to go out and build roads and change things at that level, but we can help provide resources, share best practices, and bring groups together. And so we try to do that where we can. We bring safety into everything. I'm really grateful for my team that does that in every aspect of their jobs. But we also participate in the statewide community traffic safety team, where we're able to have a voice there at that state level and then bring that information back. And also at the, the Brevard Community Traffic Safety Team, but then the statewide Florida Pedestrian Bicycle Safety Coalition. So we have a lot of involvement there. And then the biggest activity project we've been working on this year has been our action plan update. And so this has been a huge effort we've been working on. It's rolling over into next year. It is more than just changing the colors on the cover, I assure you. We are working on adjusting those goals and objectives to really align with new best practices that are available. So when we initially adopted our resolution and our plan, just one major change was the big focus was on that triple E approach, education, enforcement, engineering, right? And we've really shifted more into a safe systems approach, which is more in line with new NHTSA and USDOT standards. So those are some of the things we're changing, as well as meeting requirements to apply for new federal funding, specifically the Safe Streets for All grants. So if you haven't heard about those are large effort grants ranging from $2.5 million to $25 million. These are implementation grants that require lap certification and local matches. And so we are supporting our municipal and county partners to explore projects that can maximize impact on our high injury network in hopes that we can get this funding and implement a safety project that will take that high injury network that Andrew showed us and take one of those corridors or an intersection and hopefully change it for the better to save lives. So we currently have 4 interested agencies to see if we can get a project up and running and hopefully get some funding to make that a success. And then a lot of what I do, and Abby on our public involvement side, is community outreach and education. So we participated specifically in 43 outreach opportunities this year, covering 10 municipalities and prioritizing along our high injury network. And really just going out, talking to people. We like to focus on different parts of the year or in different areas, specifically on what those needs might be, whether it's an area that has RFBs, talking to drivers about what to do or pedestrians what to do. If it's pedestrian crashes, we talk ped safety. So we really try to target our outreach depending on where we're going. And then obviously leaning into the digital piece of that. So we know that a lot of people are online, everybody's online. And so we want to extend that education there as well. So we want to really serve as a resource for our community and being that place where they can go to share information. So we push that education online as well and expand our messaging. So next steps for the rest of the year and beyond, we'll be finalizing, like I said, that action plan update. We're excited to share that with you all and assisting our partners with going after, hopefully, that grant funding, continuing the target outreach, and once we have that new action plan in place, that's really when we'll be able to hit the ground running and start implementing the strategies and objectives that we're outlining that align really, like I said, with more of those best practices that we're seeing at a national level. So we're really excited about those updates. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yes. Thank you, Shelby. Are there questions for Shelby? Ms. Goss?
Yeah, the 4 agencies that you're working with for the grant applications, who are those?
Palm Bay, Melbourne, Brevard County, and Cape Canaveral so far. Those are the ones that expressed interest.
And what happened to the COCO application?
So they...
It was COCO and Rockledge, I think.
They did not express interest. I think specifically, I don't think they ever expressed interest specifically. So, yeah, we can follow up specifically, Councilmember Cross, but we invited all through our transportation subcommittee and through follow-ups there. It is a really rigorous process to get the grants, and so unfortunately, a lot of our smaller municipalities were just not able to commit this for this year's funding.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Shelby, it was looking at what type of project really would qualify for the Safe Streets for All funding, and that was a big part of it as well.
Oh, thank you, Georgia. I'd have to, off the top of my head, I'd have to look. I'm not sure if COCO was.
Is that the same as the Safe for Schools?
No, this is a USDOT grant, which is a lot more involved.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for Shelby? All right, thank you. Wonderful report. Thank you very much. All right, our last presentation is Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Annual Report. Ms. Abby.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So today I'm going to be reviewing our TPO's measures of effectiveness for our public outreach methods and our tools. And I just want to add that this is a report that's not required, unlike our public participation plan that is mandated that we do that. But this report really is more of an accountable document to help us monitor our engagement tools, and it's a transparent review of how we continue to look for new opportunities for public involvement tools and activities. So the full report is in your packet, but today is just kind of a high-level brief overview. Here are some of the different public participation methods and tools that we use to engage the public. And when it comes to public participation, it's changed, right, in the last few years. We still, of course, have face-to-face meetings, and that's been a long standard practice. But over the course of the last few years, we've seen that virtual public integration is now an expectation, really, of our citizens. With the pandemic, now that we have virtual meetings, you can live stream things like how we're streaming our meeting today. Communities want to meet in person, but they still want this virtual component, and so it's just as important to make sure that we're doing our best. And all of these methods are really avenues to ensure that the public has multiple ways to participate, and it increases our reach as well. Some of the different tools listed here, you'll see mostly these are digital tools. This is how people really want to receive information. I'm still a paper girl myself, like how you have flyers at your seat today, but we have to have that digital piece because that's how the public really wants to consume this information. So I'm going to touch on this a bit more in the next few slides. But before we go there, thinking about our methods and tools, I want to make sure that we do our due diligence in how we reach and engage our underrepresented communities and communities of concern. The TPO recognizes and acknowledges that not everyone has the same equal access to information. And so in order to provide that equitable participation, we want to make sure that we deliver appropriate messages and techniques to reach those individuals. We do this within our projects, our major plans, corridor studies, you name it. We make sure that we have meaningful communication and dialogue for all of these projects. And this is a list of some of the stakeholders and agencies that we work with. I also want to note that specifically this year, to contribute to our Vision Zero efforts and to target trending behaviors that we're seeing in some of the statistics that Shelby mentioned in the Vision Zero report, we're strategically planning public outreach events along our high injury network and in communities of concern to reach those to change some behaviors. So that's something new that we're doing this year and moving forward because we need to be going where these high crash corridors are happening. We need to be going to those areas to address the issues and to really get into those communities. So our goal summary, this is a brief recap of some of our participation methods. And I want to add that this is a summary and a report. It's not a quantitative tool, it's more of a qualitative. We do have an overarching target, of course, that we want to meet, but we're not really comparing year to year because we know that numbers can fluctuate. A pandemic happens, we can't have 10 public meetings anymore. Programs, plans, and studies, they all require a different amount of public participation, so we give ourselves some wiggle room. So for example, you'll notice last year maybe a small dip in the cumulative TPO workshop open house webinar events. Well, that's because in the last few years we had virtual webinars, but now people are wanting to get back in person. But on the flip side of that, we've nearly tripled our public outreach events, and that it can include anything from when we're outfitting helmets to when Georgiana goes and speaks to a chamber, a presentation with a regional partner. All of that counts when we're looking at our public outreach and presenting who the TPO is. But the most important thing out of any of these methods is, number one, we go where the people are. We cannot expect people to come to us. It's really important that we go into their communities. Of course, we have our TAC, CAC, our TPO board meetings, but what I'm talking about is we need to make sure that we're going out into the community all across Brevard County, and I think we've done a really good job in our outreach with that, trying to reach north, central, south, beachside. And eventually, if we do that, then it's really our responsibility to engage and educate them. It's not the citizen's job to know who the TPO is. We have to be telling our own story. So on that note, this year we've been really focused on reinvesting in our community partnerships and specifically training safety advocates out in the community. So with the addition of Shelby, which I really want to give kudos to her, she has an amazing background and expertise in outreach, and we have redeveloped our outreach goals and strategies focusing on fostering these community partnerships. We've always had great partnerships, but we have some gaps, as does every agency. So the most important thing is we're a two-person team. We can't do it all ourselves. We need others in the community, law enforcement, regional and local partnerships, aging road users, assisted living facility centers. We need all these different partners to come together because we can't do it by ourselves. So this year alone, Shelby has held multiple trainings to fit helmets. We've worked with law enforcement, safety partners. We've also distributed many safety resource packets and materials to municipalities, Brevard Public Schools. And then we've also given our partners tools to educate online, whether that be graphics, messaging for major campaigns. A good example of that is when we did our back to school campaign. Everyone's looking for content now, so it's much easier to share rather than create that. So speaking of social media, I'm going to wake everyone up here for a minute. Raise your hand if you have a social media account. Someone's lying. No. Keep your hand up if you're on more than one platform. So that would mean if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Okay, great. You can put your hands down. So in 2023, an estimated 4.9 billion people use social media. And they're not tied to a single platform either. Nowadays, most people have a digital footprint across platforms. 6 to 7 platforms is the norm for most people. So it really highlights the need for a government agency, organization, business to be on social media and not just on Facebook or not just on LinkedIn, across multiple platforms, so you're reaching different audiences. And each of these tools does have a different audience, absolutely. Social media is integrated into our everyday lives. You see people on their phones constantly, but it also unveils a lot of opportunities for government organizations, businesses, agencies to start to tell their own story. The point is, whether you're on social media or not, people are talking about you. So you want to be part of the conversation and you want to have dialogue with our citizens, especially as a government agency. But it's our job to steer that conversation and lead it in the right direction. Make sure we're correcting misinformation. That's a huge one. So each of these platforms has a very specific audience, and we strategically plan our social media content to benefit those audiences. Okay, so now when we get to the digital tools, here's an overview of our tools and our metrics and the numbers that we're reaching. The definitions, I'm not going to bore you with that, that's in your report. But our numbers basically reflect, by and large, that our citizens want to receive this information digitally. I'm just going to call out one of these. So regarding our digital communications, we use Constant Contact, which is an email campaign platform. We use it for newsletters, press releases, event invites. We use it for a lot. And I just want to call out that the average industry rate for opening an email or the click rate, the open rate is 34.4% and the click rate is 1.3. You can see from our Constant Contact analytics here, the metrics, we're way beyond that. And that basically means the percentage of people that you're sending to, are they actually opening your email? And that's what we want, right? We want them to open that email and to read that content. And you can tell, even though our click rate maybe took a little dip, we're looking for ways to embed videos, do some testing, some resends, things like that. So we can definitely be proud of some of these numbers. For our social media, I really think they speak for themselves. Despite having different campaigns throughout the year, the important thing is that we're growing our audience and that we're speaking to them. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make on social media, is to have a platform and then not reply or correct misinformation. But if we are benchmarking ourselves here, I thought that this was interesting. In comparison to some of our sister organizations, which, no shade, we love our sister organizations, we currently have the Facebook audience size of Metroplan Orlando and Miami-Dade MPO combined. If you know those two areas, those are huge areas. So it's something that we can really be proud of, that we have grown our audience and we continue to reach new members of our community. And when we're telling our story on social media, like I said, we are very strategic with our content. We don't put something up there just for the fun of it. We have content calendars. Shelby and I work, very closely together to make sure that we are looking for safety awareness weeks, that we're really promoting the right type of content during the certain times of year. And we also monitor it to make sure that we're engaging with our audience. Last few things I want to touch on. Even though digital is great, we still want to make sure that we have printed materials too. So this is something that I have wanted for a long time, to have our own branded deliverables. So we're starting this campaign. Many of our previous outreach materials had FDOT on them, had, Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow, and they're great partners, but it didn't say anything about who we are and what we do. So we have started, after our annual report, we started to develop some branded materials. We've started with these 3. We have a one-pager that talks about who the TPO is and what we do. And then we also have 2 rack cards that we use out in the community, where we tell the story of Vision Zero and education and outreach opportunities that the public can get involved in. We're going to be building on this in 2024. We're even doing a coloring book for little kids. I'm really excited about that, to teach them about the transportation process. And so all of that to say, the printed materials are just as important as the digital, especially when you're out in the community and someone wants something physical to take with them. And you already heard about this earlier this year, but our annual report, which is award-winning now at the local and regional level, or state level, sorry, it was a long-term goal to produce this document, and it really called attention to some of the things that we did last year. It was interactive, which was great. It had some of those digital components too, but we're very proud of this deliverable. And lastly, it's great to tell your own story, but it's very important to have good relationships with our local news media to help tell our story as well. So, we do rely on our media partners. We have great relationships with broadcasts, print, and then some of our digital news agencies too. So this is just a snapshot of some of the great stories that we had last year, but overall we had, over 80 stories, which is great that we were mentioned in. And that's it.
Thank you, Abby. All right, any questions, any comments for Abby? This was a great presentation. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I did want to mention, there are other MPO directors at statewide meetings that comment on Abby's social media impact and how they would really love to understand how she manages to reach out to the groups and how she shares very technical information to engage the public. So we're so proud of her and Shelby. I mean, they make an amazing public information, public involvement team on behalf of all of us here on the TPO. So we're really proud of those two and all of our TPO staff. Thank you.
I'm personally a little concerned because it's been, I think, at least a month since Abby's won an award. I don't know.
Right? Me too.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. If I may, before we adjourn, may we reopen the public comment period? We have another public comment that came in after.
Yes, do I have the?
Is there another card or?
No, I put in the one card and I just put on it, I can also speak on the zero vision, but I put in a separate card.
Okay, yeah, you can.
All right, so you spoke on public vision and you wanted to speak on funding?
Yes.
Please come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Sandra Sullivan from South Patrick Shores. I wanted to come up here and speak, and I loved your words that in 2025 we have a fiscal cliff as it comes to funding for transportation. And in the Brevard County budget, I did a records request through their transportation funding. They had about $10.5 million. Their current estimate for unfunded capacity improvements, $699 million. What I'm concerned about right now is an unfunded mandate from the state that I think is going to be very detrimental for our municipalities and counties for funding transportation. And that is SB 102 that passed last year, and they're making additional changes to it this year. This is the affordable housing bill. And this bill is not mostly for low income, it's for everyday housing. It is a 75% automatic discount on property tax, which means a lot less money coming in for transportation needs. And I just want to emphasize to municipalities and to the county that to look at what Orange County's implementation is, because the Affordable Housing Coalition has said that you can follow your LDR's land development regulations for exemptions. This is something I'm advocating very strongly for. In their case, they did, for example, 4 density units per acre was allowed next to single family. For here in Brevard County, for example, we have restrictions on bonus densities on the barrier island, so you can look at your LDRs. But I'm very, very concerned about the fiscal impact to transportation funding when we have Our impact fees here in Brevard County have not been updated in nearly 25 years, and everything is much more expensive. So essentially, like the dump, the county is kicking the can down the road, and we have a crisis coming, and it's always better to manage proactively and with eyes wide open with this information, and I think everybody needs to talk to the county and talk to your state leaders. The county, from looking at impact fees, a lot of other counties are increasing their transportation impact fees. For example, 2015, the county did an impact fee study that recommended a 65% increase for single-family homes. We're working on numbers 25 years old. That is a huge crisis coming. And then also talk to your state representatives on SB 102. This has very, very, very profound ramifications for funding transportation, compounding the existing issues with EV vehicles not paying gas tax. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Okay, all right. We've had all of our fun for today. We're getting down to any members have any comments for the good of the organization? All right, I don't hear anything. All right, so our next meeting is December 14th at 1:30, right at this spot. Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Mr. Allender, thank you. And all right, and second, Mr. Forrest. Have a good afternoon, everyone.